Good afternoon to you, wherever it is you are tuned in to the second episode of the EQ Lunch and Learn series. I am your host, Mucha Mlingo, and I am really excited to be here today. Thank you so much for joining us for this second installment of the EQ Lunch and Learn series. And I'm really looking forward to a great conversation about emotional intelligence and more particularly about optimism. We live in really turbulent times and there is so much complexity. Even before the arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic, stress has been on the rise across the globe, across the African continent. People are experiencing heightened levels of stress. Whilst we have amazing technology that allows us to interact with each other, we at the same time find ourselves so much more disconnected. And the emotional challenge has been rising steadily. The pandemic has just brought to the surface what has been existing, what has been bubbling beneath the surface. Employees are under increased pressure. They are stressed by the current pandemic. They are trying to figure out how to navigate or how to balance this work and life, especially for those who are working from home, where work and life somehow seem so much intertwined. There are those who have children who are online learning. There are those who have children who are at home. And amidst all of that, there is an expectation to still deliver on their work. There are those who are really feeling the pressure. Against this backdrop of a rising need for increased emotional intelligence, organizations are struggling to meet the demand. Leaders are constantly juggling multiple balls, trying to stay abreast of the lightning pace at which change occurs and manage the heightened volatility and increased uncertainty. And the pandemic has affected the bottom line in a negative way. And we know that when things are tough, the soft stuff is done away with. And so training and development, which is deemed as non-essential, becomes something that is a thing of the past. There is a very clear skills gap. Today's employees are equipped, they are armed with yesterday's tools, and they are frequently ill-prepared to deal with the challenge that we face today as we battle the coronavirus pandemic and tomorrow, whatever the future holds. Maybe once upon a time, there was little need for the soft skill of emotional intelligence, but as we navigate through this season, it has become very clear that it is a must-have. Emotional intelligence is an essential skill for all those who wish to thrive in the current environment. The EQ Lunch and Learn series aims to provide employees with insight on how they can utilize emotional intelligence as a skill to successfully navigate the challenges and changes that they face. It is a monthly chat for employees who want to get practical insights about emotional intelligence and learn how it can be more important than IQ for career growth. Gain an understanding of how to use emotions as a strategic resource to navigate the challenges faced in the workplace and to receive tools to build the emotional muscle necessary to thrive in these uncertain and unpredictable times. My name, as I mentioned, is Mucha Mlingo. I am an emotional intelligence coach. I am the founder and lead change maker at PTS Africa, and I am delighted that you are spending your lunchtime with me and my guests as we talk about optimism. Optimism isn't blindly hoping for the best. In fact, being optimistic in a passive, naive sense will actually do more harm than good. The type of optimism that is needed now as we pivot into life after COVID is an intentional practice. It is about framing adversity, framing the challenges that we are facing in a realistic way, and taking ownership on finding the solutions. And that's exactly what is needed in double, triple doses right now. So how can you practice this optimism? Well, that is why you are here. That is what we are talking about today. We're talking about how you can practice optimism. And the beauty of optimism and indeed emotional intelligence is that it is a skill. But let me not get carried away and start speaking on my own. Let me invite my guests today so that we can have this conversation together. I'm also really delighted to have these two guests, and I know we're going to have a fabulous discussion. Up first, I'm going to invite forward Beth Kidenda. Beth is the co-founder and CEO at Teach for Kenya. Teach for Kenya is an independent partner in the global network Teach for All. Teach for Kenya is committed to ensuring that every Kenyan child receives decent education that enables them to thrive in the 21st century. As an organization, they believe that learning is a lifelong journey. And really, they're committed to developing leadership in classrooms and communities to ensure all children can fulfill their potential. If you want to engage with Beth more, feel free to connect with her on Twitter, and we'll be sharing her Twitter handle. I'm really excited to have Beth with us, and let me allow her to say hi.
Hey, Mucha.
Beth. Hi, very good, awesome, great to have you on.
I don't know why my screen is showing black, but I'm trying to fix that issue.
No problem.
I hope
no
that
problem.
my voice will suffice for now. I'm super excited to be on here with you. I first actually encountered the concept of EQ while I was working with you at PTS, and it's so exciting years later, having interacted with it in my own space and at my own organization, to be here discussing it with you. It's something that has really been important to us, and we are actually looking to cascade it to everyone who comes to our organization. So this is a very exciting moment for us.
Yay, awesome. It's really awesome to have you here for this conversation. You know how it is where you have these technical issues. We actually had technical issues as we were starting. It caused a little anxiety, and I was telling the team that I need to just take a breath and practice emotional intelligence. So it's all good, Beth. When you are able, we will see your lovely face. For now, we will continue with your voice. Up next, I'm going to invite Chris Mahakata. Chris is tuning in all the way from my home country, Zimbabwe. Chris is the managing creative partner for Mawazo BD. It's a multidisciplinary through-the-line agency, and Chris will tell us what exactly that means, with proficiencies in brand development, advertising campaign development and execution, digital marketing, and the production of online content. For the last 20 years, Chris has developed a unique approach to the advertising industry with a tough economy in Zimbabwe by pivoting on a footprint across Africa, by establishing a presence in Johannesburg, here in Nairobi, and in Dubai. So really excited to have Chris with us. And to learn more about Chris and interact with him, you can visit his LinkedIn profile. And we'll share that in the comments as well. Yay, Beth, I can see you now. Fantastic. So, guys, it's really good to have you. Chris, just say hi to us all.
Hi, welcome, and thank you. You should introduce me each time wherever I go, okay? It sounds wonderful. And I'm amazing. Thank you for having us on this platform, which I think it'll be fun, because a lot of people, I think Zimbabwe is like the one place where you cannot have optimism and Zimbabwe together. It's totally not there. So at least let's try and get some insights and let's share some ideas.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. As we get started, I want to invite you. We'd like to make this an interactive session. So please feel free, wherever you're tuned in, on LinkedIn Live or Facebook Live, or if you're watching on YouTube, add your comments as we go along, share your thoughts. We will break for an official Q&A, but don't wait for that. If you have any questions you want to ask, you are very welcome to share those questions with us. We are having a little bit of feedback, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute the panelists' mics and then just unmute them as they are speaking. But yes, feel free to share your comments. You're very welcome. Diane, I can see you there. Karibu Sana, really happy to have you online. Martine, I see you as well. Thank you so much for joining us and looking forward to interaction. As I mentioned, feel free to share any comments, any questions that you have as we go along. So let's dive right in. And I'm going to start with you, Chris. You talked about how many people would not believe that you could put optimism and Zimbabwe in the same statement, right? So I would like us to start right there. And I want to ask you, you know, the word optimism has been used now more than ever in our lifetime. What does this mean to you? And as you answer that question, perhaps just give us some insight based on, you know, your ability to build a thriving business in a difficult time in Zimbabwe's history.
Optimism, especially for someone who is in an environment like Zimbabwe, is akin to opportunity. And once you train your mind to see it that way, you'll be able to see that wherever there's a challenge, and it's one of our mantras that we like to have, that whenever there's a problem, it's a chance for an opportunity. We have been stuck in this rather interesting sort of economic sort of meltdown for years now. But yet you find individuals buckling down and then finding solutions with the little that they have. And what that does is that when we then take our products outside the borders, people are amazed at our ingenuity, at our ability to solve problems a lot quicker, and the way that we can look at solutions. By having so little, we're able to have a wider sort of scope of how we can solve a problem. So I can give you an example. Is in our industry, we solve problems by taking your brand from where it is in your mind to market. So if you're going to take a brand to market and you don't have half the tools that someone in a first world or a better developed country has, you really have to think on your toes, and you have to think a lot faster, but you also have to think in a way that makes everybody enthusiastic to get into the framework. So it's drawing all that enthusiasm out and saying, how do we get enthusiasm? And we've got a little thing that we say every day, and I think that's part of the optimism part, is that every day you've got small victories. Now, small victories are like the first one that you always have is I always ask you, look, you came to work, you made it to work. That's amazing. That's actually an amazing sort of thing that you actually made it. The field cues, you couldn't have this, you couldn't have that, but you made it. That's your first victory. Second victory is a client has come to you and said they want to get work. That's another victory. So when you have little small victories every single day going through and you're able to identify them, they become this huge victory that you see. And once you have a huge victory every single day, by the end of the day, you're like, wow, I did that. And you're not bogged down by everything else that's gone wrong, but you're bogged down with everything else that's been able to happen. So what I always try to get my team to see is a client who come to us and might complain, or we might have a competitor, like we recently had. A competitor will come up and say, and dig into our client and say, the client will say, these guys will come up, we like to use them, we think they're fantastic, they're much better place than you are. The first thing you look at is that it's not you that's the problem, it's that client is seeing it differently. So you got to start seeing it differently and say, how do I see this as an opportunity for me to step up? Because I got to upscale my skills. I've got to do something that these guys have brought on the table that's not there and make me move forward much better than they have. And a lot of us have to do that beyond anything else. And that's, to me, is our definition of optimism. We're faced with a problem, but it's not a problem. It's an opportunity to do something differently.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, Chris. As I was listening to you, kept hearing you share about how you choose to see yourself, how you choose to, view yourself, what you tell yourself in the process of doing your work. And I think that is what people don't understand has so much power when you go into the work that you're doing. The way in which you speak to yourself, the way in which you speak to your team, the way in which you speak life into your work absolutely matters. We found a lot of times as we work with our team, here at Teach for Kenya, that we've had to be positive, even in the face of adversity. We're right now facing an extremely scary global pandemic. Our work, is heavily focused in the field, but there's a lot of times we've had to speak positively to ourselves and say things like, the work must go on. The show must go on. We must find alternative ways. And to be able to say that, you have to have some form of belief that there exist alternative ways. So Mucha was sharing in the beginning and saying that, optimism is not just, living in a bubble and saying that there is no negative aspect of things that exist in the world. It's actually making a deliberate and intentional choice to look at the positive, knowing full well that there's another side that exists, and choosing not to focus on that side, and saying that I am going to focus all my energies towards making this positive side of things true for me. So you're running a startup, in Zimbabwe right now, and for us, it's been really difficult, getting people to believe in the work that we are doing. As a founder, as a CEO of your organization, you are very, very closely attached to your dream. How have you managed to transfer that, optimism about your work, optimism for what is coming ahead, for your organization, to other people, to make them believe and rally behind you in the cause? So I can see that you have disappeared, but I don't know if Mucha, you can hear me. So I was just asking Chris, to share a bit about what he's done to get other people to believe and to be positive about, his organization and what they're doing at Mawazo. So I'll just check in the comments. I can see Chris is off the call. Okay, so I get confirmation that you can hear me. I can't hear Mucha or Chris, but let's engage in the comment section, all those who are watching. So what we're trying to talk about here is being an individual and being in a position where you are in a situation where you possess so much optimism, you possess so much, you possess a lot of enthusiasm for the work that you are doing, and you need to transfer this optimism, say, to your team, need to transfer this optimism to your supporters, your donors, your founders. What are some of the ways in which you have been able to communicate this? And I can see that Mucha is back. Mucha, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
To Chris and also to the people who are following online. So please feel free to share your comments on that question in the comment section.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Beth. For some reason, I seem to lose connectivity as we go. And I am really practicing emotional intelligence right now as we continue with this conversation. So I really feel that optimism is something that is very much spoken about, but I'm not sure that we really understand what it is. And the thing that excites me about optimism, and as I've mentioned before, not just optimism, but also excites me about emotional intelligence as a whole, is the fact that it is a skill. It is it's a skill that can be developed. Beth, if I look at your, career path and how you have grown in your career, maybe let me ask you this. What do you think, or how has your ability to be optimistic played into your career growth? And perhaps as you answer that question, you can just give us a brief background into, how your career has progressed to where you are now in this awesome role as the CEO at Teach for Kenya. So just give us a brief background on your career progression, and let's have a conversation about how optimism has helped you I want this session to be something practical. So how has it helped you?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that question, because optimism and faith together has been a very huge part of my career journey. I've known from a very early age what I wanted to do and the line of work I wanted to be engaged in. And I would never take no for an answer. I always believed so strongly that my path would lead me exactly to where I felt, God and everything in the universe was pointing me to be. And so I'll tell you a bit about what happened when I wanted to start Teach for Kenya. And it wasn't Teach for Kenya at the time when I was, quitting my job. It was everything in my career has led me to this moment. I have garnered all the networks that I needed. I have built relationships. I have built skills and knowledge. And I knew that one day in my journey, I wanted to start something of my own. So I remember actually resigning from my position at my last job without telling anyone except my older brother, because again, not everyone is optimistic about you leaving a paying job, to go into this world of uncertainty where you don't know where you're going to get, your next meal or your provision from. But I believed so much in my skills and my ability to actually begin something and grow something that was going to contribute positively to Kenya's education space. So I resigned from my job and I sat at home for about 3 months. And in those 3 months, at that time I was living with my parents, and my mom came one day and she was like, I know you work flexi time, but I don't think it's this flexible. Like, you've been home for a week, and I haven't seen you leave the house. And at that point, I was like, you know what happened was I actually, resigned from my position. I am working on building something. I don't know what it looks like or how it will manifest, but I know it will be great. And I kept telling my parents that, almost every other day. And they couldn't understand how optimistic I was about this move that I was making. And whenever I would speak to my friends, I remember speaking to one of my friends, his name is Katleho. And I told him that, if you want great things to come into your life, you have to make room for them. Yeah. So you have to believe that these great things are coming, and you begin to shed off the excess weight. So at that time, my excess weight was, this job I was in, and I needed to let go of it to make room for something bigger, something greater to come. 1.5 years down the line, here we are. It has not always been smooth, but I have always kept that positive attitude. I've always been optimistic, and I've always believed and spoken positively into my dream and into my circumstances that this is going to be great, that this is what I have been called to do. So I've seen firsthand, I've seen so directly the power of what positive thinking and, always choosing to communicate your dreams and aspirations positively to those around you, even when things are not working out within. Because there were those moments, Mucha. There were moments where I felt like, did I make a mistake? There was, when I just moved out of my parents' house, Teach for Kenya ran out of money. And for 3 months, I've just moved out. I'm now responsible for paying my own rent. And all of a sudden, we've run out of money. So I'm like, was this the right decision? But I kept speaking positively to myself. And I remember even speaking to my sister and telling her, you know what? This company, you're not going to be able to recognize it next year. Like, it's going to grow so big. I always used to tell my team that, you'll be sitting in our office next year and you're not going to be able to recognize this organization because of that, that positive thinking, that optimism that I always held so dear to. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing a bit about your journey and how optimism has shaped your journey. And Chris, it's good to have you back. I always find that the Lunch and Learn is a time where I'm practicing emotional intelligence. I'm not just speaking about it, because last month on our Lunch and Learn, we had a similar issue where one of the panelists was disconnected. Now, it's never happened before that it's me who gets disconnected, but we are back, we are good. And I think that those who are following us are interacting, and we're really excited to have you online. Guys, we can see you. We have guests from all over the African continent, actually beyond Africa as well. I saw Nikiwe tuned in all the way in Ireland. Tafazo, I see you in South Africa. Not to belittle those who are here in Kenya, we see you too. Thank you so much for tuning in. Chris, Optimism, how has it helped your journey? And I know you shared a bit about, Optimism in Zimbabwe and what Optimism is, but just to bring us back together, since we lost connectivity and maybe I missed a bit of what you had said. Briefly, how has Optimism helped you? And you're working in an economy that is pretty tough to work in. How has your outlook, your belief, and I really like what Beth said, your ability to speak positive. I've interacted with Chris for a number of years now, and that's one of the things I love about you, your ability to speak positively about your situation. How has that helped you?
Where to begin? When we started, we actually started our company at the worst time. I think that's when Zimbabwe had the highest inflation in the world, where I could get $10 now. And by the time I hand it to you, looking at you right now, hand it to you, it's lost value immediately. And all of us were billionaires and trillionaires. So nobody could actually beat us. And I'm proud of that. I've been a trillionaire before. So Jeff Bezos has got nothing on me. So how we do it. I think I really did practice, probably in the mirror, probably to echo what Beth was saying. Every single day, telling myself that there's just something positive that's coming out from this. I can do better. I can't do better. We can do it. I am the best at what I do. When we started, I used to go for presentations and stuff. We were young, and I would sweat, and I'd be like, I'd taken a shower. And you'd walk out there, and then somebody would say, "You're not going to get that job." And you'd go back and you say, "So what have I done wrong? What have I done wrong?" And you self-introspect and you look at it. You don't beat yourself up, but you look at what could I have done better. Okay, so I was chewing my words. I need to pronounce them better. I need to stand upright. I need to present myself this way. And I will get the work. I'll get the work. I'll get the work. And I always used to tell myself that I will get the work. So in an environment like ours, we had a lot of challenges where starting out, you wouldn't get the best work. You'd get small jobs. And that's where we coined it, that small victories. That small job will push me on to the next one. Will push me on to the next one. Will push me on to the next one. And to echo even Beth's story, we had a lot of challenges where a lot of people would have doubted us. But because with my business partner, Tavi, we firmly believed in what we were doing, so much so that we'd do some of the work for free because I truly believed in what I was doing. And then I could get to where I wanted to get to. So obviously over time, we grew. First me and Tavi, then all of a sudden we're 3, 4, 5. Next moment, we are like what we are now, 16 in Zimbabwe. We've got a team of about 16 in Zimbabwe. But we've got a great idea where we want to have what we call pods, people on the internet. And our main objective is to change the narrative of Africa. And I think that's where optimism for us is always going into it, is that these people are coming to us. And these people, I mean, everybody else is not in Africa, is coming to Africa to find out about Africa because we've got so much to talk about. And there's so much that we can give to the world. And that becomes my number one beacon on why I will keep going, is that my job is to change the narrative of what it is to work and be a business person in Africa, to be a creative in Africa, to be an African. Everybody will tell you that Africa is backward, but have you seen such beauty that you find here? Everybody, each time I travel, I've had the privilege of traveling with a lot of clients off the continent. And wherever I arrive, everybody's like me, says, "Wow, you can speak English." And my first thought is, "Oh, so can you." The thing about it is, it's because I'm here. I was so optimistic that I was going to get to where I wanted to get to. Here I am. My portfolio has grown, and I've gone to countries where I say to myself, I think I can do it better here for them. I've done so well in Zimbabwe, I can do this in another country. And that's what led us to even open up in Johannesburg. We had a client, we went down and we pitched our idea. Client had seen us for about 3 days and we pitched our idea. Then he goes, "I thought Zimbabwe couldn't produce people like you." And my initial thing was, people like us, which are, you're so professional, you're on time, you have done this correctly, you understand ourselves, you're taking our brand even better. And it suddenly dawned on me that people just don't realize what we have to give. Again, I put that down, that people don't know what we have to give. And once you start telling your story of what you can give, you suddenly realize how great a person you are and how you can change the narrative of the places where you want to be. And if there's anything that can ever motivate you, is realizing that someone starts to value you more than you value yourself. So that gave us a hop, skip, and go to other places where we wanted to get to. Is look yourself in the mirror, realize that you are of value, and what you have to bring on the table is incredible. So one of the rallying things that we always do with our team is every morning I must have a motivational sort of line that we send every single morning, and we must send it out. What it does, especially now in COVID, because we actually have most of our team work remotely, is we struggled in the beginning, and everybody was like very despondent. You're already despondent about Zimbabwe. Now you're going to have a pandemic to hit you as well. So you send out a message every single morning without fail. And each one of these messages was to tell you who you are and what makes you special and unique. I've got a running joke that I can bet $1 million United States your parents will try to conceive another child and they'll never produce anybody like you. And this is what I tell you. In 1 million years, I'll give you $1 million United States. No one is ever going to reproduce you. So doesn't that make you unique and special?
Yeah.
And don't look at your surroundings. And I heard something great from somebody. It's don't look at your surroundings. You can make your environment. You decide how you want to live, how you want to think, how you want to go. So the roads have got potholes. Okay, so let's not use. We're not travel with our cars. There's no fuel. I went and got a bike, and we started walking. Looking at things and realizing that it's not a situation that's bad, but it's just how you think that will track you forever. So you need to release your mind and start seeing that it's not a problem, but it's an opportunity that's actually waiting to be unveiled. And that's the thing that takes people everywhere we want to go.
Yeah, I love that. And Natasha, our events manager, will confirm that in every lunch and learn, and this is the second so far, we have those moments where people say things that just become the statement of the event. And so far, both of you have already given us the key statement of the event. I love what you just said there, Chris. It's not about the environment, right? It's about your mentality. And I love what you said, Beth, this idea that I must speak positivity and I must speak in a way that is positive about my situation, and especially to those around me. And when I started, one of the things I said is that optimism isn't really about, blindly imagining that things will get better. It's not a passive, naive, no effort kind of ideology, right? Optimism is about practicing optimism. It's about looking at adversity and saying, okay, this is where I am. This is my situation. What can I do about it? And I think that's the key thing about optimism. I see the questions coming through. Tafazo, I see your question. We'll come to it in a minute. What I'd like to ask is, I'd like to ask you, Beth, I'd like to come to you. A lot has been said about millennials. A lot has been said. I mean, there are books that have been written about millennials and Generation Z. And apparently after Generation Z is Generation Alpha, if I'm not mistaken. But a lot has been said about millennials and their attitude towards work and how they are spoiled. And like I said, a lot has been said. And some of what has been said has been positive about how they bring their whole heart and soul into work when they are motivated, and how they are creative and able to think outside the box. And there is much that has been said that is not so positive about how they are not really emotionally mature maybe, and that they want things too quickly, and they don't necessarily take instructions well. And ultimately it is said that millennials are not so well prepared to deal with life's challenges. So how can optimism help? And what tips would you give to a millennial who wants to practice optimism? So how can optimism help millennials who supposedly are ill-prepared to deal with life's challenges? And what tips would you give? What practical tips would you give to someone who feels, I like the idea of this optimism thing. How can I practice it? What can I do?
Thank you so much for that question, Mucha. I think I'll start by saying that just because somebody says something is true about you doesn't mean it's true. And that is something we always need to keep at the back of our heads. So much negativity is being spread around the world. And because information is so accessible and people can post anything on social media. I mean, just look at this COVID pandemic. One day COVID is airborne, the next day it's not. So there's a group of people who are going to believe that COVID is airborne, and there's a group of people who are going to believe that it's not. So that shows you that you have a responsibility as an individual to take in whatever will serve you and to sieve out whatever won't. So, and that is part of optimism and positive thinking. I'll say that you as an individual are the best at being yourself. You as an individual understand yourself the best. You as an individual have the greatest power to design, to think through and design a successful life for yourself. So just like every other skill that somebody goes out to learn, optimism is something that can be intentionally practiced and learned. Yeah. So if you say, I want to be a more positive person, what are some practical ways that you can look to become more positive? One, when you find yourself in a situation, always pause. Always say, okay, I found myself here. I can choose to think this way or this way. What are the pros and cons of thinking this way? I wasn't always like this. Let me just be honest, because a lot of people look at me like and say that, oh, you're always so positive, you're always so happy, you're always so bubbly. But it takes a lot of intentional work behind the scenes to get to this point. I literally write things down. I write a lot of things down. So when I'm in a situation and it's a bit difficult to figure out, I will literally write, this is the problem I'm experiencing in my life. Draw 2 columns and say, these are the pros, these are the cons. This is what the positive side looks like, this is what the negative side. And deliberately place my hand over the positive side and say, I choose this. At some point, I had to walk around with, little pieces of paper in my wallet with positive affirmations about myself to remind myself those things about me. So it takes looking at yourself as an individual and saying, and really building a high level of self-awareness, which is the first thing that you need to build when it comes to emotional intelligence. Saying that I'm aware that these are my shortcomings as an individual, and these are some practical ways that I can use to address or begin to, work through these shortcomings as an individual. So I'll say, to answer the question that I saw in the comment box, that is, are you born with optimism? No, you are not born with optimism. If you even look at, the example of Jesus Christ on the cross, there is a point where he, the Son of God, felt so down that he was, crying, sweating blood. I mean, if God himself, who became man, could reach a point where he was so despondent, who are we to think that there are some people who are born, just optimistic and positive in their lives? At that point, Jesus had to choose, to look at the bigger picture. He had to choose hope in that moment and say that this is for the greater good. And there are moments that will come in your life that you will have to choose, deliberately say that I choose hope. Despite the fact that I'm sweating blood right now, I choose to hold on to hope. So, can optimism help as Generation Z? Absolutely, 100%. I believe it is the key. When people say negative things about you, when people say that, oh, millennials are this, make it a personal decision of yours to prove them wrong, not for them, but for yourself, because you believe in your capacity as an individual to do great things. Because, I mean, we're not on this earth by accident, and you are not on this earth by accident. So when you are optimism, when you choose every day to believe in your, to have a high level of self-efficacy, to believe in, what's possible, the millions of possibilities for what can happen, as great things in your life, then that is the way you can tackle all this negativity that is being propagated on social media and all these things that are being said about you. The difference between us and generation, I don't know what, is it A or B or wherever our parents came from, is that information is readily available. And human beings are, very heavily inclined towards being negative. That's why we say you need to deliberately choose to be optimistic. So people will put out a lot of negative information. People will not, be quick to say positive things about you. And it's your responsibility as an individual to change that narrative and change it for generations to come, so that those people who are coming after you don't have to suffer the same injustices that you're suffering. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much. That's just so powerful. And I love what you said, the idea that, it really is or requires you to be intentional, you to actually focus on how you are going to build optimism. Coming to Tafaza's question, and I think you alluded to it, Beth. Tafaza asked, is optimism an intrinsic characteristic of certain people? Where does it come from? And I think you've answered that in parts. Chris, what do you think? Is optimism something that only certain people have? Where does optimism come from? Maybe you could add to that question.
Yeah, that was very interesting. I've got a lot of generation, what do you call them, Generation Z and millennials in our team. And I am from the other generation. I know I look like I'm a generation, I'm a millennial, but I'm old. And I struggled when I started working with them because I am from an old school sort of way. And it took me learning who they are to understand that. And I think, like Mucha always told me, is EQ. You've got to understand them, and once you understand, you get the best out of them. Once you understand where they're coming from, you understand what to give them. And for me, you're right. Optimism has got to be, it's almost like a daily sort of bread sort of scenario to be able to show them what they can achieve. I was once invited to speak to a group of millennials and they asked us that, okay, you've been around for about 18, 20 years. How did you start? What advice can you give us to start? And I said, I wish I was starting my business now, right now, because this was the way to speak to them. I said, I wish I was starting now because we didn't have everything you have right now. You've got so much that you have that I don't have. You can get a client in Russia who's never met you, and you can do work for them, and you can get paid. Just like that. I had to walk to see my client. And I remember I was living with my friend in Avondale, and we used to walk all the way into town, which is almost like 15 kilometers, because we didn't have money and we couldn't talk to them. There was no cell phones. There was no internet. There was no these WhatsApp, everything else you can do. I gave them that example to show them what they can do. There is so much that you can do now that us, the old people, the brand, whatever, could not do. So the world is actually a whole pot of optimism that you can actually just latch onto and become whatever you want to become. And it's that simple that all you have to do, if I'm right, is just to open your eyes to opportunity. Open your eyes to opportunity, and all of a sudden it will be there for you in front of everything else. The one example I gave them was during COVID, we realized we can't see clients, and we got an opportunity for a client in Cape Town, and we are in Harare, Zimbabwe. So no one is flying. I went and sealed a deal which was worth a certain amount of money in US dollars, without even meeting this person, just speaking to them on WhatsApp. And I showed all the chats to my team, and I said, this is what it is. I firmly believed we could get work during COVID. We got a client, we spoke to a client, we had a WhatsApp call, even on a Saturday, where he said, I'm sorry I'm bothering you. We sealed the deal. I sent him visuals. Next moment, the most favorite sound you want to hear from any bank or any entrepreneur, the sound of a payment notification. Ding, ding, ding. Perfect. And for me, I demonstrated to them what you can do. So if I, an old person in his 40s, can have that sort of optimism and learn from it in this environment, which has been really, really helpful for us, what do you have which can take you to wherever you want to? You're just clean. You are set up a lot better than we are. And once you know that you can do it, it's gone. So can you learn it? Absolutely. Do you need to reinforce every day? Absolutely. Because what you did yesterday is a step below. You're stepping up every single day. So you're going to have to step up. So keep going. When you get to where you want to get to, it's because you want to.
Wow. Thank you very much for that, Chris. I love that. And now that I'm in the same bracket as you, I guess we are calling ourselves the older ones.
Yes.
That other generation. What are we officially called? What are we officially?
I feel like I'm being discriminated in this.
So let's call it generation, not older and younger. Yes. But I really like what you guys are saying. This idea that it's a choice. It's a choice that you make, and it's about how you frame the situations that you find yourself in life. And optimism isn't about blindly believing that everything will be all right. It's about recognizing that things may be tough, but asking yourself, what can I do about it? I see some comments here, and I'd like us to sample some of the questions in the comments that are coming through. And Tafadzwa, who'd shared the question initially, says, great answer. Optimism is a choice backed up by small practical actions to support its building. I love that. Small practical actions. We have a question from Betty here. She says, I really struggle with optimism as an employee. Kindly share some tips on how to be more optimistic. So I want to just go back to some of the things you've already shared, and I want to highlight them as tips. And then I'd like you to add one tip each that you would give to Betty. So Beth, what I heard you say is I heard you talk about how you need to remind yourself. So that may be writing it down, saying it in front of a mirror, making a note, writing a note to yourself that you open during the course of the day, reminding yourself that you are able, that you can do it, that you can achieve. So I think that's one tip that you mentioned, and I think it's really just reminding yourself. What I know from what I've read is that we have an ongoing conversation with ourselves, and often we tell ourselves very negative things. So what I heard from you, Beth, is that I must tell myself what is positive. What other tip would you add to that for Betty, who's asking, how can I get more optimistic?
Yeah, I think as human beings, we tend to look at wins as big things that will be recognized by everybody, in the world. By worldly standards, this is considered a win. But I think we should, and I think I had Chris speak about this as well. We should be very quick to celebrate every single win that we experience in our lives. So a win can be something as simple as I woke up at the time that I wanted to wake up this morning. A win can be I ate a balanced diet this day. A win doesn't have to be a promotion. A win doesn't have to be, a raise at work. A win is just every single step that you make towards achieving your goals. So what I would add is that make it a habit to celebrate yourself as often as you can. And when you do that, you are slowly transforming your mind and like developing in yourself the culture of celebrating things rather than just sitting there and saying that, oh, you know what, I may have woken up early, but still didn't get me a promotion. Yeah. So just having that constant culture of celebrating yourself every single day, even just for having a bomb outfit. That is what celebrating.
Oh, I love that. And I'm going to celebrate myself right now for having this bomb jacket. I love that. Thank you very much. Chris, I heard you say that, we must grab opportunities. So understand that there are opportunities out there. And I'd like to imagine that is a tip that we could share right now, that focus on the opportunities that exist. So that's really about your focus. And one of the things you said earlier is that it's not really about the circumstances, it's about you. So it's about framing your mind to focus on the opportunity. So from what you've said so far, I will pick that up as a tip that someone can use to develop greater optimism. What other tip could you share?
Thanks. So when we started this year, we came up with a line, no excuses. There's nothing new about you've always seen it before. So there are actually no excuses. You should be able to see certain things. But in building up to that, I sat down and said, what's unique about this year is that it's 2020. And they say hindsight is 2020. Yeah. So our biggest challenge is we always want to look back. And I said, one tip that I want to give you is you must be present. You must be present. So take your hindsight, which is 2020, and bring it present. And what I mean by that is that there's nothing new under the sun. Even COVID is not new. There have been scenarios where this has actually happened before. If you look it up, it's not new. So look at yourself and bring it, say, your tip number 2 would be present. Be present, take your hindsight, which is 2020, and bring it forward into the present and be present. There's always going to be challenges. I must be prepared to be able to say, how am I going to bounce back? And the tip that my business partners always taught me as well was your recovery time. It determines how far you're going to go. Your recovery time is very key for you. Once you get slapped in the face, what are you going to do? Are you going to sit and cry? You can. It feels good after a while, but then you need to bounce back. So your recovery time is very, very key. What am I going to do about this situation? How am I going to turn around and go forward? I think I spoke about it earlier that I listened to some of the talk where somebody said COVID is not the problem. It's not the problem, but it's all the little things that we create around it that become the problem. You start saying, because of COVID, I can't do this. Because of COVID, I can't do this. Instead of saying, because of COVID, I can do this. I can now pivot and change the way I talk to clients. How do you seal a deal on WhatsApp without even meeting someone? Means, okay, I need to upscale. So again, tip, always upscale, always upscale. What you did last time is now base. You need to step up for everything that you're doing. You're a human being who's constantly growing, and growing means your mind has got to grow, your abilities have got to grow. Things that you want to do have also got to grow. You're not stagnant. If I leave you here sitting, tomorrow you'll be bigger. Your hair will grow. So if your hair is growing, why isn't your mind growing? Why aren't you exposing yourself to all those opportunities? So you got no excuse at all. That's always been our mantra for 20. And my final tip was mentors. You'll be surprised. Someone has had the same problem you're having right now. There's 7 billion of us in the world. You think no one has had a problem like you've had a problem? No, my business is not going to start because I live in a war-torn country and I can't get my product out to America. You think you're the only person in the whole 7 billion of us who's had that problem. Find good mentors. Mentors where you are, where you want to be. They will take you there a lot faster. And they should be brutally honest with you that this is what it's going to take. And probably to add to what Beth said, yes, you must celebrate every day. I celebrate with bow ties. I've got 72 of them, very colorful. And to me, that's my optimism every morning. Thanks.
I love that. Thank you very much. And yes, he does have amazing bow ties that he wears every single morning. I want to keep with the conversation that's coming through. And thank you so much to those of you who are commenting. We really appreciate your comments and your thoughts. Notando, who I know is tuned in from the UK, says, my view on how you can share thoughts on optimism to millennials or anyone. I'd like to take us back and concur with Christopher's opening comments about celebrating every small victory daily. And when struggling or facing challenges, to choose to be optimistic and draw from those small daily victories to move forward. I like that, yes. And I think what's coming through so much is this idea that it is a choice. Optimism is a choice. There's a comment you made about how, something negative happened and you can cry. And I think the issue isn't so much in the crying, because crying for 30 seconds is okay. It's an expression of an emotion. The challenge is that some of us are then stuck in that space, bemoaning our circumstances and bemoaning the situation we find ourselves in. And what we need to do is choose. I have another question from Tafadzwa. He says, one thing I observe in the workplace is pushback against optimism. There are always people ready to chip away at optimism. What are real tactics to overcome this? And therefore, how can optimism be developed as a characteristic of a corporate? So I think this is a really good question. How do you deal with the chipping away. And Tafazo says specifically is looking at it from the point of view of a corporate, but I'd like to imagine that it can even just be your network, which is maybe slightly different, but the people around you who are constantly chipping away. So when you say, Christopher, that I can close a deal on WhatsApp, there's someone there saying, well, no, that was just luck. That was just one. No, it's not, it's not an opportunity that's available to everyone. Maybe you knew that person from before. There are those who will chip away. I love this question. How do I deal with this? What tactics can I utilize? And Chris, I'll start with you and then we'll come to you, Beth.
Yeah, I think Beth touched on this before, where she says it's your victory. It's your victory. It's about you. And it's like you said, it's a choice. So let me tell you something that's true. And I've been in corporate for 20 years. There will always be somebody chipping away at you, no matter what you do, no matter how many people you're trying to please. And I remember a line that came up that if you want to please everybody, then you should start selling ice cream. So it's not us. For me, this is what you need to always tell yourself, that it starts with you. And what's important is how you're going to feel. Because the only other being that you're with is you. You're with yourself every single day. So it's important to get yourself right. There will always be people who want to attack you, no matter what you do. Even if it's the best in the world, they'll always find somebody. So you've got to have, and I'll borrow Michelle Obama's words, is that when someone goes low, you're going high. You always tell yourself that, yeah, maybe I knew them, maybe it was, but we got the deal. What is the one thing we're celebrating here? That we've got it. We've got what it took. We are exactly where we're supposed to be, and I'm happy with that. This is the moment I'm in. Take that moment. Again, celebrate that moment. And it's about you more than anything else. In corporate, we have won some accounts, and people come back and say to us, it's because you knew someone. Okay, so I made an opportunity way back to know someone so that 20 years later, I'm able to open that door. So I laid the path for it. So why don't you lay the path for it? Why is it such a bad thing for you? If I can do me so well, you can do you so well. And that's always going to be it. And please don't ever think that this world is pretty. It's not. There are some pretty rough times that you're going to meet. But always remember, celebrate those little things, because it's the little victories that add up to these momental victories that you're going to have. Ask yourself how long Apple took to get to where it is, how long Jeff Bezos took to get to where he is. All those individuals had a lot of people who told them that it would not happen. It's such a bad idea. But you fix yourself onto the prize. And that's what we always do. So when we win, we then fix ourselves onto the next prize. And we don't listen to what everybody's going to say about stuff that's happened. Like I said, we've won already. So I can't change that. So we fix ourselves on the next prize. So whenever someone starts chipping on you, say, well, I'm aiming for something else now. So now they don't have something to point at because you are a constantly moving target. So they can't hit on you whatsoever.
I love that. Thank you very much for that, Chris. Beth, your thoughts. How do you deal with being in an environment where there are people chipping away at your optimism? And I want to add another, as the CEO of an organization, to Tafadz's second point. How do you cultivate an environment that allows optimism to thrive?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that question, Mucha. I think I was reflecting so much as Christopher was talking, because as we are in a position where we can control the things that we allow to influence us. Yeah. We can control the things that we allow and let into our space. So you can find yourself in a position where you're sitting in an office where there are people who their work is just to speak just ill, as in no matter what happens. So you come in and you're dressed nicely in the morning, and the first thing they say is, oh, so you think the rest of us don't know how to shop? You know, I mean, their nature is just so negative. And I think you need to bring yourself to a point where you understand that those people exist around you. There's a saying, and I always butcher sayings like completely, but there's a quote that says that you cannot control when negative things that happen to you, but you can control how you respond to them.
Yeah.
So that's what we should be working towards as individuals. How are we controlling our response to this stimuli that exists around us? And our control comes from what we nurture as our response. I remember you talking about something about fight, flight, and something like that when you were doing emotional intelligence training for us. I forgot, I wasn't such a good student, but controlling, how you respond to things. So saying that when somebody speaks negatively towards me, how will I choose, to respond? Will I choose to say something negative about them, in return, or will I just choose to respond in kindness? Because sometimes people do those things to get a reaction out of you. And when they don't, the game becomes boring all of a sudden and they stop. Yeah. So we need to also be deliberate as to how we choose to respond to things that happen to us. The second question, Mucha, could you please remind me?
Yeah, so I was just asking, because what Safatwa said is, how we're now looking at it as an environment.
Yes,
and I'm thinking as a CEO, as a CEO, how do you build an environment where optimism is something that is lauded, something that is appreciated, as opposed to something that's torn down?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give an example. I've never been married before. I hope to be. But I heard that when you are in a marriage, you are advised not to speak negatively about your spouse, no matter, especially to your family, no matter how, what bad thing they do to you. Find somebody like a counselor, somebody who will forgive them. Because once you open that Pandora's box, once you make it known that over here, it's okay to speak negatively about my spouse, it will always happen. And there's no way you're going to stop them. That's the same attitude I took when I went into my organization. When I went into starting Teach for Kenya, I said, my team will never hear me speak negatively about my organization. So no matter what happens, I will find somewhere to dump and say that, oh, you know what, this thing is stressing me, maybe I should give up, but my team will never hear that. And once they get in, once they, they come into your space and they say, over here, there's no negative talk, they will know that, maybe if they decide to do that negative talk, it can have an adverse effect on them. But the culture that you create right from the beginning, when you meet someone new or when you bring new people into your space, it's going to stick. The first impression really lasts. So when you're building a team, when you're going into a new space, when you're building new relationships, when you're cultivating new networks, always lead with what you want to be the culture going forward. So I'd say, for me, what has worked is from the start, I let my team know that over here, we believe in the sense of what's possible for Kenya's education space. We believe in what's possible for Kenya's children if we provide quality education for them. We believe that this thing is going to happen. And even when we see, things happen, how people complain and say, the Ministry of Education doesn't care about us. After that, we have to speak some positivity and some life, into our organization. And that has become a culture for us. So never open that Pandora's box if you don't want it to become culture. If you don't want people to speak negatively about you, if you don't want people to speak negatively about your ideas, hold them sacred and speak positively about them. And when people see you do that, they will pick up that habit and it will become normal.
Yeah. I love that. And it's about, starting or when you lead, it's about setting the bar, setting the standard for what is okay in the organization. And I think as a leader, optimism then becomes a skill that is essential, because it is true, there are going to be tough times, but we need to be able to frame those tough times and look forward. I want to go back to some of the comments and questions that I see coming through. I think we've tackled all of them. If you feel your question hasn't been answered, please type it again in the chat, type it again in the comments so that I see it. Maybe I've missed it. I see a comment here from Deanne. She says, optimism is a choice. You can't control what others say or do, but you can control how you feel about it. Choose to be optimistic always. It makes life easy, even in rainy days and hopeless times. I think if I may chime in to that question that Tafadzwa asked and share my contribution over and above what Chris and Beth have already said, what I would say is this. Where you are around individuals in a workplace who are constantly chipping at your optimism, I think the first thing is to actually recognize it for what it is. There's something about the power of actually recognizing something for what it is and then rejecting it. There is something very powerful about that. Recognizing for what it is, that this is someone who is pulling me down, and actually receiving it and then rejecting it, rather than allowing it to just be absorbed because you are not intentionally saying no to it. I'll give you an example. As last year was my final year as the president of OIT Nairobi, the Organization for Women in International Trade, and I traveled quite a bit. And over the time when I was traveling, I have two small boys. It meant I was away from home. So I was having a conversation with a friend. A friend knows. Sometimes the person who will chip at you is a friend. I was having a conversation with a friend, and the friend made a comment like, "Oh my goodness, with all this traveling you're doing, your children must really be missing out." And I received it, I heard it, I acknowledged it, and I rejected it. And I said, actually, no. I believe I am a good mother, and I think I'm doing a good job of finding balance. And I remember saying to the friend that I'm blessed that parenting for me is a partnership that I do with my husband. So I refuse that statement, because the challenge is when you don't actively refuse statements, they begin to run around in your mind. So I rejected that one. So that is advice I would give, that sometimes you actually need to stop, pause, acknowledge it, and actually reject it, so that it is gone away from your environment and it's not something that keeps going around in your head where you keep second guessing yourself. Chris, you look like you wanted to say something.
No, I'm just concurring what you're saying. I think a lot of people think that life is always going to be easy, but one thing that I always tell my team whenever they walk into my office and they've got this look that there's a huge problem is, once you cross that line, you're not telling me about the problem, you're telling me about the opportunity and the solution. So they stop and they start thinking, okay, so it's the problem, so I'm going to tell them that this problem, then I've got to. So it becomes a mantra in your mind that, okay, you're going to this office. When you cross that line, you've got a solution already. So it becomes practice for them as well. Whenever they come with issues they might have, I say, before you tell me the problem, tell me that you got a solution. No, I don't. Okay, go. Come back when you go. And
I
also,
like that.
Yeah, our lives, the most expensive school fees I've had to pay have been our own, and learning the people you need to be around, how business is. I'm always paying school fees. So life is like that. School fees you always pay until you are done forever. You've always got to remember that. So they'll give me some tips that will help us definitely in most things that we have.
I like that. And I think this goes back to the conversation about how to build an environment. If you're leading a team, how to cultivate an environment where people focus on opportunity. And actually, interestingly enough, I think it's something you can approach to parenting as well. I do that with my boys often. When someone comes with a problem, tell them, come and tell me your problem, but at least have some ideas about what the solution could be. I have one last question I want to ask to tackle before we wrap up, because time that is well spent really flies by and we don't have much time to go. Jimmy says, how and when do you differentiate between optimism and overzealousness? How do you differentiate between the two? Who wants to tackle that? How do you differentiate between optimism and overzealousness? Yeah. Go ahead, Chris. Yes.
I think I've got an answer there, because I think I was asked that a couple of years back, when somebody says, how do we know you're just overzealous and you are, or you're optimist? For me, optimism has got a goal to it, and it's got steps that are predefined that get to where it's supposed to get to. Overzealousness is just somebody who's just shouting. They've got no goal. They're just going away everywhere. They're just trying to make as much noise as they can. So overzealousness is noise for me, but optimism has got a goal and steps that you want to reach. That's how you can define it.
I love it.
Yeah, I like that. Christopher. And I think I'll add, optimism, as you've said many times on this call, is optimism is not thinking that there is no negative side to things. It's acknowledging that it exists, but choosing to focus on the positive.
Yeah.
Overzealousness, on the other hand, is you're not even aware of the realities of what exists, around you. You're just blindly, it's some blind optimism that does not even make sense. It has no direction, as Chris said. So optimism is self-aware. It is aware of its surroundings. And overzealousness is just an unaware person.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow, I love that. Optimism is self-aware. Overzealousness is blind. Yeah, I think that's one of the statements of the session. Natasha, I think you need to write that one down. Optimism is self-aware. Overzealousness is blind. Jimmy, I hope we've answered that. A couple more comments here. Christine says, I believe in a crisis when being optimistic is difficult. Consider the fact that every cloud has a silver lining. And says, stop, pause, acknowledge it, then reject it. I'm borrowing this mantra, Mucha. Thank you so much, guys, for your comments that have come through. Our time is coming to an end. Before I come to the team and ask them for their parting shot, let me share with you what I feel has really stood out for me as we've had these discussions. I'd like to share with you 3 takeaways that I have heard from my awesome panelists. Number 1, choose to communicate your dream positively to yourself and to those around you. I think that's really powerful. You must speak positivity. The Bible says, as a man thinketh, so is he. So optimism starts with your thoughts and the expression of those thoughts in your words. The second thing is, it's not about the environment, it's about you. Optimism doesn't just happen, or opportunities don't just happen in great spaces. Even in spaces of difficulty, opportunities occur. So it's not the environment, it's you as an individual making the choice to look for the opportunities. And then stop, pause, acknowledge it, and move on. If it's something that is not true, don't allow it to continue existing in your environment. Don't allow it to continue playing around in your mind. Your recovery time will determine how far you will go. You must recover quickly. You must be adaptable and learn to pivot. It's okay to cry for a moment. It's okay to lie on the ground, having fallen, and ask yourself how you got there. But you must get up, and you must learn how to get up quicker each time you fall. Yeah. Don't speak negatively about your company to your team. Lead with how you want the culture to be going forward. So those are the insights that I have gained from this session. And wow, it has been an amazing time. Beth, Christopher, parting shots. What is your final parting shot? What would you like to leave with? What would you like everyone to leave with as we end the session?
You're going to go to one life here, and you better make it the best that you can. So if you stop and you go backwards, that's not going to happen there. Always look forward. Always seek out to change the narrative. That must be your calling card in everything that you do. Change the narrative. Write your story the way it's supposed to be written. And the author of that is you and no one else.
Thank you, Chris. And Beth, your parting shot?
Yeah, I think I'll say that, and I'm going to butcher a quote once again. I'll say in life, you only get what you have the courage to ask for. So believe that you can get it and go for it.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, guys, for being here today, for sharing of your time and sharing of your wealth of knowledge. It's one thing to facilitate a learning about optimism where we're talking theoretically and I'm sharing a PowerPoint presentation. What I love about the Lunch and Learn series is that it is practical. We're getting practical insights of how you can practice emotional intelligence in your workspace. So thank you so much to Yukabeth Kidenda, co-founder and CEO at Teach for Kenya. It's been a delight to have you on, and I've been typing some of the comments that you've made because they have been right on point. Thank you so much, Chris Mahakata of Mawazo Business Development, all the way in Zimbabwe. One of the things that I love about COVID, and one of the opportunities that COVID has presented, is that life doesn't just have to be about those around you. Now we can do work and interact and collaborate across countries, and that's really exciting for me. So thank you for being our first non-Kenyan guest on the EQ Lunch and Learn series, and we are going to ensure that on a monthly basis we have individuals from across the African continent who will be participating with us. So thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much, Beth, for joining us. It has been a delight to spend this lunch hour with you. And I know that all those, you can see the comments coming. People are saying, thank you so much for sharing of yourself. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Guys, we have come to the end, and I just would like to wrap up on this session. You have heard it here. Optimism is a skill that you can develop. And before we leave, I just want to share some insights with you. I'm going to say goodbye to our panelists as I share the final remarks. So thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much, Beth. Optimism is a skill, and we would like to give you a gift. If you registered for this series on our website, we have your email address, and we're going to use that to share with you the 3 secrets of optimism, how you can practice optimism and develop that optimism muscle. Optimism is a skill, and I repeat this over and over because I feel that this is what excites me most about emotional intelligence, the idea that it is something that we can all learn. It doesn't matter where you start, it's all about where you finish. And so you too can develop optimism. I'd like to invite you to join our closed Facebook group. It is open to all those who have interacted with us on the different programs that we have run. And we have a weekly EQ challenge. As an organization, we are committed to help you develop the muscle of emotional intelligence. And so on a weekly basis, we share a challenge, an EQ tip that you can use that will help you develop greater emotional intelligence. So please do use the link and join our closed Facebook group. I'd also like to invite you to our training. We have a program called Unlock Potential with Emotional Intelligence, and it will be running next week from the 22nd to the 25th of this month, September, from 9 to 10:30 a.m. The Unlock Potential with EQ series will help you to learn how to stop operating on autopilot and build greater self-awareness so that you can increase your impact and effectiveness at work. It will also help you to develop the skills necessary to use your emotions as a strategic resource. Emotions drive behavior. The question is, are you pointing your emotions in the right direction? Join me on this program so I can help you to understand how you can use your emotions to propel you forward so you can achieve your career goals. And lastly, participants who join on this program will be able to build interpersonal awareness and strengthen professional relationships so they can maximize influence. It is the price of lunch. Wherever you are across Africa or anywhere else, the program costs you what you would pay for lunch. I have shared a link. Please follow the link and find out more about this program. I'd love to have you participate with us for roughly about $50. Please join me next week. It is 4 sessions, an hour and a half each, and you'll also get to do and emotional intelligence assessment. So it will be a great program helping you to understand how you can use your emotions to thrive at work and power up your career. So I look forward to having you join the program next week. As I mentioned, as part of being in today's session, we would like to give you a gift. As long as you registered online on our website, we have your email address and we will share this gift with you. If you've joined us online and you hadn't actually registered, please send us your email address. You can send an email to info@pts.co.ke so that we can add you to the mail out where we will share the gift, the 3 secrets of optimism. And it is a gift that will help you to practice greater optimism. On that note, it is a wrap. We have come to the end of the program. We have committed to ensure that we don't keep you longer than we had promised. Please diarize our next Lunch and Learn. It will be on the 21st of October, same time, 12:30 to 2 p.m. East Africa time. And next month, we'll be talking about change. We'll be talking about how you can leverage emotional intelligence to make that pivot, to move forward into the future of life after COVID. So please diarize and make sure that you tune in with us. The EQ Lunch and Learn series is brought to you by PTS Africa, the emotional intelligence company. At PTS Africa, we are passionate about helping you to develop greater emotional intelligence for your success in your career. Thank you so much for spending your lunch with me, Mucha Mlingo, your host for the EQ Lunch and Learn series. And I look forward to interacting with you in our closed Facebook group on the training that we have. The training, maybe I didn't mention and you may not have realized, is an online program, so you can join us from wherever you are. And I look forward to interacting with you and to supporting you as you go forward and grow in emotional intelligence. Thank you so much for being with me. And thanks again to my awesome panelists, Yukebeth Kidenda from Teach for Kenya and Chris Mahakata from Mawazo Business Development. Thank you so much and God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye from me and the PTS Africa team.